Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of When Life Feels Messy. I am one of your wonderful hosts, Erin Raspberry.
Hello, I am your other wonderful host, Ashley Barrera.
And we are so excited for you to be tuning into the first podcast episode of 2023.
Woohoo! We made it.
We made it. Welcome to a new year.
Yes. And, we are in for a treat with this episode.
Are we?
Yes, I really love this twist on approaching the new year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a new perspective. A lot of people kind of glaze over this perspective, but it's really touches on the reality of what happens at the beginning of every new year.
Yes, yeah. Because a lot of the times, and you've probably heard a lot so far in this new year, are the unrealistic sides and expectations and things to do. And we are here to debunk all of those.
Yes.
And give you the truth.
Give you the truth. And to start us off, I chose a quote to ease us into one of those realistic, attainable, achievable quotes that I'm really taking to heart and implementing hopefully every day.
Mm-hmm.
And this quote states, "Gratitude is more of a compliment to yourself than someone else." And this quote was by, how do you say this name?
Raheel Farouk is going to be my best guess. But if we butchered that, we are acknowledging that we probably did.
Yeah.
So don't come for us.
But this really resonated with me because it's easy to compliment and show appreciation for others.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to acknowledging yourself and your accomplishments and just appreciating yourself, not just for the things that you do for yourself, but just for who you are, is something I really resonated with and want to be more intentional about.
Yeah. And I think that perfectly segues into what in the world is the topic of this month's podcast episode, which is really looking at the unrealistic side of the new year, new you mindset. And I think that quote kind of highlights and adds to what we'll be really talking about and getting into, is that a lot of the times when we set New Year's resolutions and be like, okay, January 1st, I'm gonna be a whole different me and I'm gonna achieve all these goals and do all these things.
Right.
A lot of the times that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we beat ourselves up tremendously. And so I think that this quote is a great way to even just start off of, we are going to focus on whatever we, resolutions we might set or how we approach this new year. We are going to make sure that practicing gratitude and complimenting ourselves is a key part of that planning and doing.
Yes, gratitude and appreciation that we're here right now.
Right, that we're able to talk to all of you about this topic that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Literally.
And so with that, let's kind of even dive into talking about the unrealistic side of the New Year, New You mindset and New Year's resolutions. It is a lot of unrealistic expectations and goals that really take a hit against our mental health. And what that kind of looks like is a few different things, which I kind of want to cover real quick, if that's cool with you. Okay. So in thinking about how can unrealistic expectations really negatively impact us, if we are setting a goal that we know is not achievable or not realistic in the sense of the time that we can complete it or what we are realistically able to do, then when we aren't able to achieve it, which is what's bound to happen, that's going to impact how we pursue and do other things
Right.
in the future. Like, it's really setting us up to be disappointed in some ways. And yet, setting these unrealistic expectations is like the expectation and the norm that's kind of like pushed in society, right?
Right.
And so it's like even thinking about like our future ability to pursue things in life that matter to us, right? That gets tarnished a little bit.
Right.
Because over time we develop this, well, I try this and it doesn't work, so what's the point? And it's like, well, did the way you tried it actually look in terms of a realistic way to benefit you? Or was it kind of shooting for the stars without having the proper steps to get there?
Right. Like the expectation is to make these large, grandiose goals for the new year.
Yeah.
And like setting those can be really stressful.
Right.
Because many times, like you said, they're unrealistic with our lifestyle or, you know, the amount of energy we have on a daily basis.
Yeah. There's a lot. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things. And even what we talk about is probably not going to cover the surface of all of this. But it gives a really good snapshot into it. Another thing to think about is unrealistic expectations and goals that we set are not flexible.
Right.
Like, you think about, we have a tendency to set things that are kind of like the highest achieving, right? Like saying, I'm gonna start working out every day even though I haven't worked out in 30 years. Well,
yikes.
That's not flexible at all, right? Because then when life happens and you're not able to exercise, maybe you get sick, maybe work schedules change, or for our students, you have homework or assignments or a study group, then not having that flexibility is going to put you in the mindset of, well, I got off my thing, I couldn't do it every day, so I'm just going to give up.
Right.
I'm not going to do it anymore. And so having that lack of flexibility really adds to that it's not reasonable. Because we need flexibility in life with any goal, anything that we plan to achieve.
Life is unpredictable.
Life is unpredictable, right? And so when you set these unrealistic goals and they're rigid, then you're setting up to be disappointed because life is not like that. You can't live a flexible life that throws curveballs at you with rigid expectations.
Right.
The last one that we wanted to talk about under looking at the negative impact is that when we, especially, like there are sensitive things that people set New Year's resolutions about, right? The ones that come up most to me are usually revolve around weight, right? Or like changing like diets or lifestyles or things like that. It's when those expectations or those things happen that get us down, that get us depressed, when we're not able to lose 100 pounds in 3 months or whatever, crazy expectation it is it's really hard to let go of that. It's really hard to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, for sure. And from my experience and, working with individuals that have really high expectations or these unrealistic expectations or goals, those are really tied to who they are.
Right.
Or internalized to say something about them.
Right.
When in reality, if you don't, quote unquote, accomplish this goal, right, that doesn't say anything about who you are or your value as a person.
Right. Yeah.
But like you said, it's difficult to step out of there.
Right. Because you're setting such high expectations for yourself. And so in that, when you're not able to achieve those super high, which I'm talking to our healthcare students here, because we hear all the time these super high unrealistic expectations you have for yourself. When you're not able to achieve them because you're human and those expectations are out of this world, right? Then that's going to impact your motivation and your inspiration to continue on and to accomplish the things that you want to do. So it's important to even keep in mind of how impactful making unrealistic expectations has on us, because we don't think about it. Like,
right.
you don't just like wake up and you're like, man, me setting that goal really just like threw off my whole mental health in a negative spiral. But we have to, because it's harming us even if we're not seeing it as the cause.
Right. And that's a good segue into, how do we deal with these unrealistic expectations? How do we help ourselves, number one, acknowledge them and do something about them, right? Be proactive about them. The first thing we wanted to share with you is implementing curiosity and humor.
Yes.
When you notice these unrealistic expectations popping up.
Yeah.
So instead of beating yourself up when you notice one, consider making it into a game. You might say, that's a funny one, brain. You're trying to put this really, really intense goal, like, in my top priority, and not today.
Not today.
Big LOL.
Right.
Or you can say something like, so interesting, I have this impossible expectation.
Right.
And approach it like a puzzle. Like, I'm curious, like, why does my brain, like, automatically go to that?
Right.
Like, where is that coming from?
Exactly.
Or you might simply observe, noticing, I'm really hard on myself when I make mistakes. Like, that internal critic is just loud.
On it. 24/7.
Yapping away.
Ready to chew.
Like, we need to lower the volume on that microphone.
Right. Mute button, real quick.
Mute button. Something else that I noticed helped with these unrealistic expectations, or that really intense critical voice, was naming that critical voice, or like putting a image or a character to it, kind of like personifying it, and kind of just be like, go in your corner, like, I'm acknowledging you're there, but also like, not today.
Right.
So that's really useful.
Yeah.
Another one that we wanted to share is using the double standard technique. So this includes, what would you say to a loved one in the same situation? So usually they will say something far more reasonable, realistic, and measured to someone else than what they would say to themselves. So for example, you're beating yourself up over being late to class, or, forgetting you had that assignment due because you were, dealing with a family emergency, or whatever it was. But if that was, let's say, your little brother, right, or your best friend, you would be like, hold on, you got a really stressful life. Like, no, duh, you forgot to do that thing. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of, the quote that we started off with, that gratitude, that, like, appreciation of, like, you got so much going on, give yourself some grace. It's okay. And practicing saying something more realistic and compassionate to yourself.
Right.
Or even thinking about, what would that family member or loved one say to you? Like, I had one of my family members say to me, remember to treat my ash nicely. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hold on to that.
Yeah.
So that one's really useful.
Yeah.
Another one is to reflect on the effects of your expectations. Is it helpful? Are the expectations you're setting, are they helpful for you? Are they realistic for you? Again, practicing compassion. Compassion is one of those really general, like, broad words.
The buzzword.
Yeah. And people are like, okay, compassion, kindness, right? Caring.
Yeah.
But it also means so many other things, like patience, openness, gentleness.
Right.
Just overall caring.
Yeah.
Going back to the gratitude. And lastly, like we touched on earlier, allow for flexibility.
Right.
And noticing how when you practice that, those like rigid expectations, those rigid thoughts kind of melt away.
Right.
There's not so much pressure to make sure you do all of the things exactly this way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that covers really like a good basis and foundation for what we need to do for that. And I love that, like, the quote you shared earlier really just like tied into that almost perfectly. It's like, oh, how nice. We didn't even plan for that, but it was beautiful. So if thinking about, okay, so we know the negative impact of unrealistic expectations, right? We talked about, you know, some ways to deal with that, which of course there's probably hundreds more, but that's the ones we wanted to share. How do we actually go about changing or challenging our instinct to go straight towards unrealistic goals and instead actually look at what are realistic and attainable for us, and how to hold ourselves accountable to doing that and not setting ourselves up in a way that's going to make us feel disappointed.
Right.
And so, first off, like we've been saying, is this whole new year, new you mindset. Maybe let's just skip that.
Yeah.
Let's just skip that. Can it be something like new year working on me?
Literally. When did that quote even start? New year, new you. I feel like that's so like...
It seems like a 2010s thing, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like, it was like catchy. It's probably on a million shirts or cups or something.
Literally.
And it's like, I remember like hearing people say that. I'm like, oh, that's a nice concept. Like, new year, I'm gonna be a whole new person. And then every year I'm like, I'm the same person I was 2 hours ago when it was last year. Like,
it's like one of those trends that's like, oh, cool in the moment, but then when you're in it, you're like, this is not helpful, and it just perpetuates not accepting yourself.
Right.
Like, just acknowledging this is where I'm at. This is okay.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if this is how you feel, but I just had this thought come up, and this is personal too, because I'm thinking about how I approach it in the past. But it's almost like this idea of like new year, new you, because the you that you are isn't good enough. And it's
literally
like, dang, like, why do I have to be a whole different person?
Exactly.
And even thinking about when I would set, you know, these unrealistic goals, because I did it out the wazoo, it was beating myself up so much. It was so much judgment of like, you don't do this enough, and you really suck at this, and you need to be better. And it's like,
why haven't you done this already?
That was the mindset that I'm starting a new year. Like, I've seen, like, when I was looking for quotes for this, it was like, a new year means it's a blank page. Make it a good one. And I'm like, well, dang, like, this whole time I'm going into this blank page with already, like, scribbled, like, hateful stuff and doodles.
Right. Some weathered pages.
Right. So it's like, how is that supposed to be helpful if, like, the whole intent behind it, I'm being judgy.
Exactly.
And, like, hating myself. So it's like, let's just skip it, right?
Let's skip that right there. It was a trend.
Yeah, let's move forward and just be like, another year for me to continue to work on myself and grow in the person that I want to be, right? Like, let's take the next 365 days to learn something new.
Literally.
Like, why can't we just have that? That seems way more attainable to me than, like, I have to be a whole different person by January 1st. Like, what?
Exactly.
Okay. So, we're going to skip it. That's official Aaron and Ash advice. We're going to skip New Year, New You in 2023. Because when we think about self-improvement, right, which is essentially what New Year, New You is all based about, we know that self-improvement is good. We know that this is something, like, we should continue to strive for because we're consistently growing as humans the older we get.
Yeah.
We have new life experiences, things like that. And we all want to aspire to be our best selves and seek out these improvements.
Mm-hmm.
But when the self-improvements that this mindset has created is that you're not enough or doing enough unless you're doing X, Y, and Z that you can't do because it's unrealistic, then really, how is it self-improving?
Exactly.
It's not. I answered it for you.
I think it's improving for fitting other people's mold of who you're supposed to be.
Ooh, true.
Or where you're supposed to be at in life.
True. Yeah.
And that's ugh.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's true.
Ewy.
Gross. Ugh.
But it's a real thing.
It is.
Like, it's a real thing.
It is. Yeah. I'm glad we chose this topic, honestly.
Yes.
Because this is just, like, I'm even, like, talking about this. I'm like, oh, I needed this. Like, what kind of resolutions was I about to start trying to make in the next, 3 weeks?
Ugh.
Like, and now I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
We're not
doing it. But as we go into 2023, right, here are some things that we should kind of just have in mind, right, as we start challenging this mindset that maybe we've gotten stuck in, or maybe we've had, like, pounded in our brain, right, by others or even ourselves, because we are really mean to ourselves a lot of the time. And the first thing is, we are almost certainly going to fail or make mistakes and maybe just, like, completely bomb something, and that is okay, right? It's okay to do that because that's how we grow, that's how we learn. But when we make unrealistic expectations and then we quote unquote fail, it can make us feel like we didn't live up to this standard, that we're not as worthy, that we're not as able to achieve our dreams and goals. And so we have to remember that we're human and failing is a part of the journey.
Yes.
And we are not striving for perfection, but progress is my favorite quote ever, because I need to hear it a lot, so I say it a lot.
Literally. And I know it sounds so cheesy, what I'm about to say.
Oh, what you're about to say.
Well, what you just said was cheesy. But
Oh, thank you.
What I'm about to say
She's
is
so
also
nice.
cheesy. You know, I've heard it, I don't know from who, but failures, mistakes, missed opportunities are actually opportunities. Oh, I just failed X, Y, and Z, or I really messed up here, or, you know, I didn't accomplish this goal, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Let me not go down the spiral beating myself up for days or weeks, right? And just see, like, that's an opportunity. Wow, okay. This is an opportunity not to, yes, probably make the situation quote-unquote better or, you know, try again, but an opportunity to practice gratitude, practice kindness to yourself.
Right.
Again, going back to how would you treat your loved one if they failed or if they made a mistake? Would you beat them up?
Guarantee
Emotionally?
you would not treat them the way you treat yourself.
Literally.
And it's so sad because it's like we literally spend the most time talking to ourselves in our head more than we talk to anyone else. And yet most of that is negative and demeaning and so, like, just mean, like,
and gross.
And it's like, why is that what we spend so much time doing? And how would things be different if we spent all that time practicing gratitude and compassion and showing ourselves even just a smidge of, like, acceptance and love? And it's okay if you make mistakes.
Right.
You know? It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of so interesting.
But it's another way, like you said, knowing that you're going to fail, knowing that you're going to make a mistake. And when those things happen, that's an example of holding yourself accountable.
Right. Exactly. Oh, look at us. We're killing the game. Okay.
Love it.
Next one we want to talk about in setting, you know, realistic goals and things to keep in mind is this false hope syndrome. And what this is really talking about is, like, people long before us have started questioning, like, you know, mental health people, psychologists, things like that, have started questioning, why the heck do we keep continuing to set these resolutions in the new year, even though we often like fail at them, or we stick with it for like a week or two and then we drop it, or we give up, or all this stuff. And what they've come to answer that with is the false hope syndrome, which is really kind of this cycle, right, of failure and then renewed effort. And it's all motivated by these unrealistic expectations that we set for ourselves. And talking about how fast we can do it, the amount of either things that we're going to accomplish or the amount of time, how easy it is, the consequences of these self-change attempts, right? It's like, it's a great thing on one hand, but also it like collapses us when we don't achieve it and when we have these setbacks. And it's almost like, when I was reading about it, it's almost like an addiction in a way. It's like we're addicted to this like process of, building up into the new year. I put in my mind, you're going to change, you're going to do this better, you're going to be a different person come January, whatever year it is. You do it, maybe something happens, or you can't stick with it, or it's too hard, or it's not attainable, you give up. But then you tell yourself, well, you know what? Next year I'll be better. And it's like
a reinforcing thing.
Right. And it's like almost this addiction of like, okay, I am going to try again, but I also give myself this excuse the next 10, 8, however many months left in the year. And it's like, that's so fascinating that we're addicted to this like beating up process of ourselves. And it's like, wow, what does that say about like us as humans, like on like a deeper level? So I was like, that's so fascinating, but like so true. And like I myself do that all the time, right? And it's like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also just human nature to focus on the negatives, right? As part of our survival, like we had to know the dangers or the threats or the negatives, right, to survive.
Right.
But those in today's world are a lot of internal core beliefs that, like you said, can perpetuate and feel like an addiction almost. Of, let me try to accomplish this goal. Not really. Like, that failure almost reinforces the cycle.
Right. But then it's also like, right, like come the end of the year, leading into January, that you're going to like kind of have this hope, right? So it's like, is it kind of like a adrenaline high of like, even if it's false hope, that's some kind of sense of hope that you're just like, yes, I need that. It's so interesting. I don't know. I could go on and on about that because it's so fascinating to me, but we'll continue on because that could be like 3 episodes itself.
So usually when we set these unrealistic goals, they're like really grand in terms of like a broad topic or like a really huge number of something, right? So the best goals, though, start with simple, achievable steps. So setting unrealistic goals is an excellent way to set yourself up for failure, as we just talked about, right? And can really set back your mental health. So we wanted to also mention another tool to use to set realistic goals. And we wanted to share with you the acronym called SMART goals. And this literally stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based goals. This clever acronym comes from the business world, but it's still very applicable to everyday life goals. And I love SMART goals with working with my clients because it's just so like literally these words, right? So user friendly when you're feeling overwhelmed, when the thoughts are just rushing and you're like, I gotta do X, Y, and Z like this and like that, and the severity, intensity of like that pressure can really be tackled with a SMART goal. And it's gonna feel really weird at first because you're like, okay, this seems like really so simple and so like, I don't want to use the word dumb, but like
too easy?
Too easy.
Okay.
It seems really like too easy, right? Like beginner level Guitar Hero.
Oh. Okay, that's not always easy, but okay.
But it's really needed.
Yeah.
Like, it's really needed. So I would like to set a SMART goal for this episode.
Ooh.
For myself.
Okay.
So specific, I want to practice gratitude throughout this year.
Okay.
Measurable.
How will you know?
I want to practice gratitude either through journaling or through like writing, recording a video of myself once a week.
Okay.
And say at least one thing I'm grateful for.
Right.
Of that week or that day. Or maybe even write a story. I don't know. Attainable, yes, I can do it once a week for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Relevant to me, definitely, as I mentioned when we started this episode, like gratitude and self-appreciation is something that I've really struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's time for me to really be intentional about that.
Right.
Time-based, definitely being, like it's time-based in terms of it's not going to take up a bunch of my time during that specific day I do it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it's a couple sentences or whatever it is, I still will like to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's my SMART goal.
Thanks for the example.
Of course.
That was really good, too. You did that on the fly.
I know.
I would need, like, at least 3 business days to, like, write it all out.
Yes.
Okay, and last one we want to talk about after hearing SMART goals and how to do it, thank you, Ash, is if we set a goal or an expectation and we haven't considered, like, that this isn't a lifestyle change in some way,
Right.
then how are we going to successfully achieve that? Right? Like, you think about if we set a goal that is a huge lifestyle change, right? Like, you hear so many people like, I'm going to lose so much weight in the next year.
Or I'm going to start this diet.
Or I'm going to start this diet. If you haven't done the research you need and created a plan, created a schedule of what that looks like, then you're not going to achieve that.
Right.
Because
literally
doing these like big grandiose, like usually, you know, unrealistic expectations takes a lot of change in your life. And so you have to make sure that this is not something you're just going to say you're going to do and then expect you to follow through with it with no like consideration beforehand. So if you do plan, I'm going to lose so much weight in the next year, I'm going to go to the gym so many days a week, or whatever it may be, right?
Go get your pass right now.
Right.
Your gym pass right now. Go get you some tennis shoes right now.
Yes. Like, set it yourself up to have the things you need and, like, educate yourself on that. Like, if one of the things is, I'm going to start grad school next year, well, you need to know, where do I even look? If I don't even know what I want to go to school for, maybe I need to connect with a career services department or a career counselor, like professional, like,
or someone that's in the field already.
Right, exactly. So you have to make sure, like, that you consider what all changes that this is going to have on your life in order for this to become a reality and something that you can do and can achieve. So, just some examples and things to think about, right?
Yes.
And of course, we've said this a million times, there are so many more. But we are not going to list off 1,000 different ways you can do this because you would never listen to another podcast episode that we did. So we're going to save you time and keep our followers. So,
yes. And also, you know what's best for you.
Exactly. So with that, we're going to move on as we start kind of wrapping up this episode.
Okay.
And what we wanted to do to kind of leave you with is maybe some ideas of what could be some helpful resolutions for mental health in the new year, right?
Yes, mental health, love.
It's our game, but, we're biased.
Yes, I'm literally wearing a counselor vibe shirt.
You are. It's very cute.
Mental health, thank you. Mental health is my passion.
So as we wrap up this episode, we wanted to kind of leave you with some ideas of helpful resolutions related to mental health.
Yes.
Because obviously that's our game.
We love it.
We love it. So why wouldn't we offer this? And keep in mind too, the things that we're going to talk about, this is not saying I'm going to become amazing at this and do this every day 24/7. But again, how do we make these things realistic for you?
Mm-hmm.
So first would be making time for self-care, right? And that can look and include whatever feels best for you because you know you the best.
Mm-hmm.
But being intentional about implementing things to nourish you and to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as a priority.
Mm-hmm.
And not just using all your time to take care of everyone else in your life.
Ouch.
Next one, which we've kind of been talking about a lot, is being kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Showing that gratitude, showing that self-love, compassion. How can we incorporate even a smidge more of that in the next year?
Right. I love this next one is make sleep a priority.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Sleep is magical. It's a really magical thing.
Yes.
And it's so restorative.
Mm-hmm. And yet it's the first thing our college students throw out the window. Why?
Literally. You need your sleep.
You need your sleep.
Your brain needs it. Your body needs it.
And for anyone that's listening to this right now and you're saying, but Erin and Ash, I have to study in order to, pass and live my life. You can't effectively study if you don't sleep. Just say it. Mic drop. Next one, limit your screen time. You've probably heard this a million different ways, but your eyes looking at a screen, whether it's your computer, whether it's the TV, your phone, tablet, whatever, that has an impact on you. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're doing that right before bed, it can throw off your whole body trying to naturally relax and get ready for sleep and how deeply you sleep at night. So maybe just implementing, okay, I'm only going to spend so many hours on my phone. I don't look at my phone 45 minutes before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that looks like for you and is reasonable, maybe we can change that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. The next one is learn more about mental health. And there's so many ways to do this. But I'm going to put a plug in here and you can check out our resources, aka our other blogs,
yes.
pods, and YouTube channel, even our social media. We love to share things that teach and inspire mental health, how to take care of your mental health, what it encompasses as a college student. So there's our plug, When Life Feels Messy project.
Love that. We always got a plug.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we wanted to also do, which I think is really nice, is we have some specific suggestions from actual CAPS staff who were so gracious to share. Mm-hmm. And so the first one that we wanted to share is from Dr. Linda Loudon,
Yay.
who used to be our head assistant director over the Dallas-Houston campus, and she still does that part-time, thankfully. Mm-hmm. But she was gracious to offer such a nice little resolution idea and something that I think she's personally going to do, and that is just experience more joy in 2023 and schedule more fun activities and traveling. And I don't know why, but that just makes me feel That's a nice,
Yeah,
that's a
that
nice
one was inspiring. I was like, I want to do more fun things.
Right. Like, how simple of a statement to say, I just want to experience more joy.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, how impactful to, like, say that and, like, mean it.
Yes.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you, Dr. Linda Loudon, for that.
Thank you.
Okay, our next one is from Dr. Rakhi Sin,
Mm-hmm.
who is one of our psychologists on the Denton campus.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually gave us, like, something to think about in terms of, like, a mindset change. Like, kind of like a shift in, like, perspective and thinking. And her whole thing was, instead of, like, focusing on the outcomes, we focus on the process and goals. And I was like, that beautifully sums up, like, what we're trying to get at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, like, not the perfection aspect, but the progress aspect, right? Like, what can we, like, start to change in increments? And so some ideas, like, she threw out was, like, I will try to understand my eating habits and my nutritious needs versus, like, I'm just going to go to the gym so many times and lose so much weight in this amount of time, right? So you see, like, the focus is more on the journey, the progress, versus, like, this is my end result and, like, not flexible. And some other ones she offered was, like, working on my understanding of what strengths I have and also, like, where I can grow, trying to find balance and not go to, like, the extremes in either direction, which is really hard.
Yes.
Because it's, like, this all or nothing thinking is what our society, like, drills into us. And it's hard to find that little happy place in the middle. And then trying to focus on kindness to myself and others, which again perfectly ties into so many other things that we've been talking about this episode. But the focus is really on, like, being and, like, in the moment, in the process versus, like, the actual doing. And so I thought that was really nice, like, to just almost not even knowing what this episode was really about or what we would say. It's like she kind of perfectly summed up exactly what we're trying to get at.
Literally.
So I was like, thank you, Dr. Rakhi-san.
Thank you.
And then, of course, what would we be if Ash and I did it? Offer up our own. And
yes,
mine, I think, is also, like, a personal, like, resolution or thing that I want to focus on in 2023. And that is really noticing, like, when I get all up in my head, worrying about things or future things or being in that anxiety, negative spiral, is to really challenge myself to get back to the present moment and to focus on living in the moment I have. Because I've noticed as I get older, time passes so much quickly than I ever noticed, like, even a couple years ago. And so really challenging to, like, start just being more aware of, if I'm not in the present moment, getting myself back into that.
I love that one. Thanks. Mine is something I've already stated and even made a SMART goal of, but to practice more self-gratitude and celebrating myself. Hopefully every day. Realistically once a week.
Right.
And exploring what does that gratitude and celebration actually look like.
I like that. I don't think enough people actually focus on, like, how will I celebrate, you know?
Yeah.
Just kind of like a buzzword that's thrown out there and then you don't really ever do it. So I like that.
Yeah.
Happy for you.
Thank you.
And ending quote, because we didn't give one last month, Ash pointed out. So we gave you 2 in this episode to make up for it. And hopefully we didn't lose followers over that. But the ending quote that I found is by Khalil Gibran, I think is the name. Again, don't come for us if we mispronounce. We admit that we're human and we make mistakes.
Yay.
But it is, tenderness and kindness are not signs of weakness and despair, but manifestations of strength and resolution.
Wow, I love that.
And I think, you know, kind of just ties into, out of all this, the focus is on just being nice to ourselves in this journey and really analyzing what it is that we need and what we can realistically achieve, and how do we just practice, like, some self-love, acceptance, and gratitude along the way. So I thought that was a really nice way to just sum up this episode.
Yes. Also, great job.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank
Fingerprint tips.
Yay. We also want to make sure we share with you to stay tuned for next month's episode on loving yourself in the same way you love others, which, is very connected to this topic as well.
We did kind of foreshadow it a little bit.
We really did.
We did.
Also, remember to check out this month's blog covering mind-body wellness. And we also have a video about that on YouTube. So please check us out on those platforms. Blogger, YouTube, Instagram. We're there.
Stay connected with us.
Stay connected.
But thanks for tuning in to another episode. And we will see you next month. Bye.
Bye.